right, so this is the Arken EP8 1:8 power LPVO. They're releasing it with a new mil reticle as opposed to the old KL box reticle that they have that a lot of people complained about. So I'm going to show you a little quick rundown. Once we get through that course of fire, I'll kind of go over my initial impressions of the optic and tell you about it a little more. All right, Arken EP8 LPVO. We're going to shoot at 300 meters. Hopefully you can see that yellow plate down there, kind of to the right of the power lines there. So I'm going to shoot from here 300 meters, and then I'm going to run up to this little low rise and shoot from the kneeling at 200 meters. All right, last 2 hits right there. Kneeling, unsupported. Well, that was easy. All right, so apparently that was so easy, I'm just gonna do it backwards. So I'm gonna drop into the kneeling at 200, shoot till I get 2 hits, and then run back to the 300 and drop in the prone and get 2 hits from there. I don't have my shot timer, so we're just gonna go. I gotta wait for that second hit. Back to 300 meters. Shot low on that second shot. Well, there you have it. This thing can definitely hit. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the optic. So a little background on myself. I really like LPVOs. I think they're kind of the best all around for your budget kind of optic for a mid-range kind of carbine that can kind of do everything, right? They can do very well at close distance, almost as good as a red dot if you were actually trained up on how to use it and you have the ocular adjusted properly and things like that. And then they can reach out to mid and even long ranges, helping you stretch your gun out a little more than even a red dot with a magnifier can. I've been using LPVOs for at least 10 years now. So I started off in 2014 as a private using an L can on my Daniel Defense M4 or whatever it's called, SOTMOD Block 2. We just called them Daniel Defenses in the 75th Ranger Regiment. But the L-can 1-4, sort of an LPVO. It doesn't adjust like with a ring like this where you can go from like 1 to 8 power. It has a little flip lever on the side of it, and it's either 1 power or 4 power. So a little bit limited, but then later in my career there, I switched to the Trijicon VCOG around 2016 timeframe, so like 10 years ago, and really enjoyed that. A lot of guys weren't using that. A lot of guys were using the EOTechs with magnifiers at the time. And a few guys were using the Vortex Razor 1-6, like the Gen 2. So no one was really using the Trijicon VCOGs. We had a few in our armory. We had a lot of different optics available to us. And I decided to give that a shot, and I kind of fell in love with LPVOs. So recently, Arken reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to kind of review this optic and give some impressions on it, because they're releasing this new reticle that they have for it. And I said yes, I was intrigued. I haven't used any of their optics before. I know the Arken EP5, they're like 5 to 25, is heavily recommended in kind of the like more like budget long range shooting community and stuff like that. So I was curious to give their LPVO a try out because I didn't really know they made one. So they've had this LPVO out for a couple of years at least, I think now, but the original reticle that they released it in is called the KL box reticle. It has its purpose. It has kind of a lot of range finding capabilities based on like the height and width of like an average size adult male, which I know I have actually talked about before, about ranging things based on like shoulder width and stuff like that. And I actually don't have it right now, but because I painted this gun and I need to put a new one on here, but I usually have a butt stock kind of dope card. It tells me my drops for whatever the ammo is that the gun's zeroed for at each 100 meters out to 1,000. And then it also tells me how many mils wide and 18 inches is basically at every 100 meter step out to 1,000. So it can help you range targets basically. I'll put a picture of that KL box reticle here up on the screen, but a lot of people didn't like it. They thought it was too cluttered or confusing because it kind of like zigzags back and forth down. So Arken, to address that issue, is releasing this, the Arken EP8 with the mill Christmas tree reticle. So the new reticle is called the KLG reticle. So it's a pretty standard Christmas tree reticle, okay? It's got mills for windage and for drop, and then it kind of expands out so you can hold wind at distance and stuff like that. And then it's got a large outer ring that illuminates for when you're in 1x and you're shooting really close. It kind of helps redirect your eye into the center, in my opinion. So yeah, pretty basic. If you know what a mill reticle is, that's basically what this is. Somehow Arken knew that I am a huge fan of mill reticles because they read my mind and then emailed me about this. For the rest of the optic, in terms of the specs, it's a 34mm tube, which gives you a lot of travel in the turrets for adjustment or drop if you're actually dialing using the turrets. The turrets are capped like that, and then they're non-locking, but there's no zero stop, but it's not really like a long-range precision optic. Again, this is for like that close to mid-range kind of range, in my opinion, whether you're using it for kind of, like a home defense, military, police kind of application, or a competition shooting application for like 2-gun or something like that. I think it's good to have the cap turrets because then you're not bumping shit, basically. So this optic actually comes as a package. So it comes with the optic, it comes with some flip up scope caps for the front and back, and like an actual like bikini scope cover, I think. And then it comes with a little extended lever for the magnification on the optic. I usually don't use those because I find they snag on stuff a lot. I like just having like a nub like this. I don't like a completely smooth round ring like the Vortex razors, but I think having a little nub like this is kind of the best of both worlds. But if you like an extended lever, you're doing competition or something like that, you can throw an extended lever on there. It comes with it, and it's like a nice solid knob that can go in there. And then additionally, in the package, it comes with this mount. It actually comes in the mount already mounted up, so all you have to do is set this thing on the Picatinny rail of your AR and crank it on there. So like I said, it's a 34mm tube. It's actually a first focal plane optic, which is awesome. I don't like second focal plane because your drops are essentially only accurate at 1 zoom power, which I think is kind of annoying. I'd rather have the reticle shrink and grow. And I think with a well-designed reticle, that's not really an issue with a first focal plane optic. And then it also has Japanese ED glass, which is really fucking good for the price point. So when I've been shooting this thing at close range on 1 power, something that's kind of common with shittier LPVOs is that on 1 power, or what it says is 1 power, it's not really a true 1x magnification. It'll be like 1.1 or something, and it's just not slightly the same. Like one of your eyes is just ever so slightly off because it is ever so slightly magnified. I had no issues with that, and frankly, I feel like the whole LPVO industry has actually progressed beyond that. I don't think I've had an LPVO that had that issue in a few years, and I think it's good that companies have actually responded to the criticism of a lot of those things and really made sure that their 1x is a true 1 power and isn't kind of thrown off your eye when you have it at that low power for shooting close range. Issue I had previously with another LPVO, my Trijicon AccuPower that I got rid of, was that the eye box was miserably unusable at the full power. It was also a 1 to 8x optic, but yeah, I had to often dial it down to like 6 power or even 4 power to have a usable eye box and actually get behind it when I wasn't just like on the range shooting from a bench. If I was in any kind of uncomfortable position, the eye box was essentially unusable, which led me to getting rid of that. I'm happy to say this optic does not have that issue. It's completely fine. I've shot it in a lot of different positions at this point, and it does completely fine even at full power. Another LPVO that I had previously that I actually got rid of because it had a massive flaw was the Atabal 1 to 10. So it had an issue where the turrets, once you like zeroed your optic, you couldn't like reset the turrets to 0 every time. It would only basically go every like 0.3 of a mil would like the turret drop back down, and you could set it so sometimes if your 0 was in between, it would be like a 1/10 of a mil high or 2/10 low or something like that. You sometimes couldn't get the actual 0 to line up. And then they basically told me that that's just how the optic is and to kick rocks. So I'm happy to say that the Arken EP8 does not have that issue. It is completely fine. Zeroing it, I fucked around with it a whole bunch just to make sure, because I actually had that out-of-ball optic for a long time, and I had just gotten lucky where it was a 1 in 3 chance, and when I zeroed the optic, the zero was actually lining up and was able to drop down back on the turret, like the scope cap essentially was. But eventually my luck ran out, my zero didn't line up, and then I was like, what the fuck, because I'd been recommending that thing to people because I genuinely did think it was a good optic at the time. But yeah, and then their customer service really showing their true colors too. But no issues like that with the Arken, so pretty fucking awesome right there. And then my experience so far with the Arken has been that they are very responsive, which is great. So at this point, over the last 10 years, I've probably tried somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 different LPVOs, including this one. I'm not going to say that this one is the best or nicest one that I've ever used, because I've used things like Vortex razors and stuff that have incredibly clear glass and really good edge-to-edge focus in them. However, this package, including the mount and all that, retails for $379. I don't know of an LPVO that's that good of a deal. So if you're looking for something that's maybe not like $1,000 optic, plus then you have to buy a mount in addition to that and factor that cost in, I would say this is the one for you. So the LPVO I was using on this rifle previously to getting this was the Primary Arms PLXC, and that's a really great optic, but it's something like 3-4 times the price of this, and that's not even including having to buy a scope mount for it as well. And I would say this thing's like 90% of the way there, which is pretty fucking awesome. So like I said, if you're looking for a more budget LPVO, or you're looking to throw an extra optic on a spare gun, or you're trying to recommend something to a family member who just has one gun and they're not trying to, you know, blow $1,500 on a fucking piece of glass, I would point him in the direction of the Arken EP8. It shoots really well close range too. I had no issues with like my eye finding the reticle or anything like that when it was at close range, shooting quickly. I did plenty of that. It has an illuminated reticle that does get daylight bright, as people like to talk about. And it actually has 2 night vision settings on the knob as well. The only criticism that I currently have with the optic is that on the illumination knob, we're all a little spoiled, I think. I'm used to the illumination knob having like off notches in between each power setting. This one, you're on 0, and then you have to like turn it all the way up to whatever level that you like it at. Is that the end of the world? No. And on an optic where the whole package is under $400, I don't think that's the worst compromise in the world, because typically you have it on 0 and you can either bump it to 9, which is like the highest power, which is probably going to be your most commonly used daytime reticle brightness. And then if you're working at night, you can go from 0 to night vision 1 or night vision 2 if you're shooting under nods. So I don't think it's really a deal breaker, but it's one of those things where like those higher end optics are going to have like an off detent in between each brightness level, and it's just something a budget optic is probably not going to have. So yeah, I think if you're looking for an LPVO in this price range, I don't really know of anything that's quite this good in this price point, especially with the mount being included and stuff like that. Also, I've had no issues with the mount coming loose or anything like that. It was already mounted in the mount, and haven't had any issues with the shifting in the mount or like losing my 0 or anything like that. So it's been really great. And I would say buy with confidence. That's just my first impressions. I'm going to keep testing this thing, and I'll probably give a more long-term review / like overview of LPVOs in general at a later date. But so far this thing is awesome. I've been shooting it. I've brought it out to 4 or 5 range trips at this point, and it's been sick.
Now watch this drive.
Yeah, that's not too bad at 300 meters.